I was on hold with the cable company when her name popped up on my screen. I swear I almost dropped the phone. I hadn't seen that name in 5 years. 5. Not even in court records or junk mail or the side column of some social media suggestion. I'd done everything short of hiring someone to erase her from my life. And yet, there she was, calling me, like it was normal. I didn't answer. I let it ring out, watched the screen go dark, and just sat there, heart pounding, mouth dry. The hold music now a distant murmur behind the static in my head. Then it rang again. Same name. I should have powered off the phone, tossed it across the room, blocked her, erased her again, burned whatever cosmic cord had just reconnected us. But I didn't. I picked up. Before I could even speak, she whispered, "Don't hang up." Just like that. Like we were mid-conversation instead of 5 years into absolute silence. "I need to tell you something," she said. "And I need you to listen all the way through." My throat tightened. I felt every ounce of bitterness surge back into my bloodstream. I didn't say anything. I just waited. She took a shaky breath. "He's dead, Dawson." Silence. "He's dead," she repeated. "And before he died, he told me something. Something about you. About the past. And about the child." I blinked. The what? She kept talking. Fast now. Panicked. Like if she slowed down, I'd hang up or die of a stroke. Which honestly felt possible. "I know you hate me. I deserve that. But what you thought happened between us, back then, wasn't the whole truth. And what I thought I knew about him wasn't either. I need to show you something. Please. Just one meeting. One." I said nothing. Because in my head, I was screaming. Not words, just noise. 5 years of noise. Until she said, quieter than before, "I don't want to carry this secret alone anymore. I can't. Not after what I saw. And I think you have a right to know. Especially if she's yours." Click. She hung up and left me in a living room that suddenly felt unfamiliar, with a phone in my hand that wouldn't stop buzzing, and a name I hadn't heard in half a decade now echoing louder than anything I wanted to remember. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I just sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the floor, phone still in my hand, like the call might come through again and undo whatever mental tailspin I was trapped in. She said there was a child, and it might be mine. I couldn't even form the sentence out loud without choking on it. After 5 years. After all that wreckage. After all the therapy, the moving, the attempts at pretending I was okay when I very much wasn't. I kept replaying her voice in my head, cracked, breathless, and saying, "Especially if she's yours." She. A daughter. I felt the air leave my lungs every time I thought about it. Could Melinda really have hidden something that massive from me for this long? Or was this some twisted manipulation? One last power move from the woman who once looked me in the eyes and said, "You don't make me feel alive anymore." By 6 a.m., I was still wide awake and pacing. I gave in. I texted her. Just one word. "Where?" It took her 2 hours to reply. My stomach flipped when her message came through. "Old conservatory. Noon." It felt like a trap. It had to be a trap. The old conservatory was where we used to go during our engagement, some abandoned glass greenhouse behind the community center that no one had touched in years. We had carved our initials into one of the beams there. I remember doing it with her pocket knife while she laughed, telling me not to mess up the M. I hated that she chose that place. But of course I went. I didn't dress up. I didn't shave. I barely looked in the mirror. I just drove, windows cracked, heart banging like a kettle drum the whole way. When I pulled into the gravel lot, I saw her immediately. Same face, slightly older, tired, but somehow still glowing with that unnerving confidence that always made me feel like the floor could vanish under me at any moment. She was wearing black. She always wore black when she was scared. I used to think it was just fashion, but no. I knew her tells. She stood by the door of the conservatory, arms folded, like she wasn't sure I'd actually show. I parked, got out, didn't say anything. She opened her mouth, closed it, looked like she might cry. I hated that I still noticed. Finally, she said, "Before you get angry, I brought something. Someone. She's in the car." My stomach turned to concrete. I looked at the SUV parked nearby, windows dark. "I'm not here to play games, Melinda," I said, my voice already cracking. "What is this?" She stepped closer. "She doesn't know who you are. She doesn't even know I'm showing you. But I have a photo. From last week." She reached into her bag, pulled out a crumpled envelope. handed it to me like it was a grenade with the pin already pulled. Inside was a single picture, and when I looked at it, my legs almost gave out. Because the girl in that photo, she had my mother's eyes. I don't know how long I stared at that photo. It felt like time folded in on itself. My hands were shaking so badly, I thought I might drop it or rip it, but I didn't. I just stood there, frozen in the middle of that crumbling conservatory, surrounded by dead leaves and broken glass, holding a blurry photo of a girl who looked like she could have been mine. Like she should have been mine. Melinda didn't say anything. She just watched me. Her face was unreadable, and that scared me more than anything. The Melinda I remembered always had something to say, always a clever excuse, always a quick jab, always a way to twist the knife while smiling. But now, nothing, just quiet. Finally, I forced the words out. How old is she? Melinda hesitated. That pause told me everything I didn't want to hear. She's 4, almost 5. My knees buckled. You got pregnant right before you left? She nodded slowly. I didn't know. Not until after. I found out 2 weeks after I moved in with him. I could barely process it. And you didn't think I had a right to know? I didn't know who the father was, she said. And he didn't want to question it. He just claimed her. We pretended. It was easier that way. I wanted to scream. I wanted to break something. My whole chest burned with a fury I hadn't felt in years. But beneath it, deeper and colder, was something worse. This aching hollowness. I thought I'd buried the last of what she could do to me. But apparently, there was still damage left to mine. And now he's dead, I muttered, staring at the photo again. So now you tell me? Her eyes filled with tears, but I wasn't moved. Not anymore. I didn't just come here to drop a bomb on you, she said quietly. I came here because she asked me something last week I couldn't answer. I looked up, throat tight. What did she ask? She asked why she doesn't have your smile, Melinda whispered. Not his. Yours. That did it. That was the moment I broke. My vision blurred. My knees gave way, and I sat hard on one of the stone benches behind me. All the noise in my head, the years of therapy, the rage, the bitterness, it all cracked apart. There was a little girl out there, possibly mine, a daughter I never knew existed. And Melinda had lived an entire life with her, day after day, as if I'd died and been replaced. I want a test, I said. My voice was hoarse. I want proof. I need to know for sure. I already did one, she replied, almost too fast. Behind his back. I have the results. She's yours. I looked up, stunned. Then why now? Why come to me now? Melinda stepped forward. Because she's asking questions. And she deserves a real answer. And because I can't keep lying to her. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I just stared at the girl in the photo. My possible daughter. My blood. And then Melinda said something that chilled me to my core. She doesn't just look like you, Dawson. She remembers things. From when she was a baby. And she told me something that doesn't make sense. Something about you, and that night. I looked up sharply. What night? Melinda's hands trembled. She remembers the night you caught us. But she shouldn't. She was barely a few weeks along in my belly. But she described it. The rain. The fight. The broken glass. Your voice. I stared at her, horrified. That's impossible. I thought so too, Melinda said. But now I'm not so sure. She said our daughter remembered the rain. Not just that it rained, but my coat, soaked and hanging on the banister. My voice echoing down the hall. The glass breaking. A red lampshade. Details so bizarrely specific I couldn't make sense of it. I stood there across from Melinda, jaw half open, heart doing somersaults in my ribs, because I remembered those things. I lived them. But how the hell could a child who wasn't even born yet know? Melinda kept talking, and each word made me feel like I was sinking deeper into some surreal fever dream. She said she hears the yelling sometimes. At night. She draws these pictures. Scary ones. The kind therapists would raise eyebrows at. And last week, she asked me why I hurt the man in the doorway. She thinks it was you. I staggered backward a step. What man? Melinda hesitated. She didn't say. Just that he was in the doorway when we were fighting. And that I pushed him. That's when something cracked loose in my head. Because I did remember someone in the doorway that night. A shadow. Not just Melinda and that smug bastard she cheated with. There was someone else. I chalked it up to rage, to my brain trying to protect me from whatever trauma I couldn't fully process. But now, a child drawing it years later? I couldn't breathe right. I asked her to show me the drawings. She said they were at her apartment. I didn't want to go. Every part of me screamed not to go anywhere near the place she now called home. But I had to know. So we drove separately. I followed her across town, hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I was sweating like I'd run a marathon. The apartment was in a newer complex, the kind with perfect hedges and artificial friendliness. Melinda let me in without a word. The living room was clean, too clean, like she had tried to erase any trace of a child ever living there. No toys, no crayon marks, no chaos, just a sterile silence I didn't trust. She disappeared into the hallway and came back with a shoebox. Inside were drawings, dozens of them, all made with the same dark, frantic crayon strokes. And in nearly every one of them, there were 3 figures. A woman, a man in a coat, and a figure in the doorway with no face. In one drawing, the faceless figure was falling backward, arms flailing. In another, there was red scribbled across the floor. Not like blood, just red, but the shape of it matched the exact place where the wine glass had shattered that night. I sat on her couch, frozen, flipping through them as the nausea rose up in my throat. "What are you not telling me?" I asked her, not looking up. Melinda sat across from me, wringing her hands. "I don't know if you'll believe me. Try me." She looked straight at me. After he died, I started seeing things in the apartment. Doors open that I locked. Her talking to no one. She says he still visits her. I narrowed my eyes. "You think his ghost is in your apartment?" "I don't know what I think," she whispered. "But she says he's angry. And last night, she said your name in her sleep." I stood up. "Where is she right now?" I demanded. Melinda hesitated. "At my sister's. I didn't want her here for this." I clenched my fists. My mind was spinning. I didn't believe in the supernatural. I believed in facts, DNA, and trauma scars. But nothing about this was making sense. And I couldn't shake the feeling that something more had happened that night. Something even Melinda wasn't admitting. That's when I saw it. On the hallway wall. A framed drawing. Bigger than the others. Newer. It showed a little girl standing between 2 doors. One door had light behind it. The other? Pitch black. In the dark one was a face. Finally, a face drawn with sharp, jagged teeth. And under it, in shaky letters, he said you never loved her. I turned to Melinda, heart pounding so hard I thought I'd collapse. "What the hell is going on?" She looked at me with tears forming again, and said the last thing I ever expected. "I think he was watching us long before we ever knew it." Her words rattled in my head like loose nails in a washing machine. "I think he was watching us long before we ever knew it." I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake her and demand every detail she had buried over the past 5 years. But I didn't. I just stood there, frozen in that quiet hallway, staring at the drawing like it might blink. I finally managed to say, "Who's he?" "Mark? You think your dead boyfriend was spying on us?" She hesitated, and her voice dropped so low I almost didn't hear her. "No, not Mark. Someone else. Someone from before even him." My chest tightened. "From before?" Melinda looked away, shame written across her face like ink on paper. "There was a guy, back before I met you. It didn't last. I left him. He didn't take it well. I thought he was just obsessive, but when I got with you, things started happening. Little things. Notes. Objects moved. The night we fought. I think he was there." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You're telling me there was another guy in the house that night? Watching?" "I didn't know at the time," she said quickly. "But a week after I moved in with Mark, I found something shoved into my glove compartment. A necklace I lost years earlier. One you never even saw." I felt physically ill. "And you didn't think to tell me this?" "I was scared," she said, tears forming again. "And I was ashamed. I thought it was over. But now with her drawings, the whispers, the things she says at night, I don't know what's real anymore." I backed away. The room suddenly felt too tight, too warm. The girl, my maybe daughter, she wasn't just remembering my voice from that night. She was remembering his. The man neither of us knew was still there, watching. I didn't go home that night. I couldn't. I drove around aimlessly for hours with the radio off, just listening to the engine hum and trying not to let my mind spiral. But that was impossible, because no matter how hard I tried to hold on to logic, every thread of this story was unraveling in a direction I never could have predicted. I wasn't just dealing with an ex-wife who cheated on me, hid a child, and disappeared for 5 years. I was now staring down a past neither of us had fully understood, one with someone lurking in the shadows, someone who might have been present in the most violent, life-destroying moment of my adult life. And if what she said was true, he was still around. The next morning, I got back to my apartment around 6. I hadn't slept. I looked like a walking corpse. But the second I opened my front door, I felt it. Something was off. My keys were still in my hand. The deadbolt scraped a little differently than usual. The air inside felt colder. Still, like the place had been entered and then sealed shut again. I stepped inside cautiously. Nothing looked broken. Nothing stolen. But when I walked into the kitchen, I saw it on the table. A single envelope. No postage. No name. Just like the ones I used to find back when Melinda first left me. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a folded piece of lined paper, the kind you'd find in a cheap school notebook. And written in rough, uneven pen strokes was just one line. The mother lies. The girl remembers. You'll see soon. I dropped the note. My hands were soaked with sweat, my knees nearly buckling. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't coincidence. Someone had been in my apartment. Someone who knew I'd met with Melinda. Someone who wanted me afraid. I called her immediately. She answered on the second ring, groggy. Dawson, there was a note in my house. Silence. Same style. I continued. No name. No stamp. Just left there. It said you're lying and that the girl remembers. Melinda's breathing grew heavier. I didn't tell anyone you came. I swear. I wasn't sure I believed her. I want to see her, I said. Your daughter. My daughter. Whatever she is. I want to look her in the eyes and know. I need to talk to my sister, she said. She's been watching her. But I'll set it up. Just give me a day. No more delays, I said, teeth clenched. I've had enough of secrets. We hung up, and I just stood there in my silent apartment, staring at the note again. I should have called the police. But what would I say? That someone left a creepy message with no fingerprints and a cryptic warning? That I think it might be tied to a cheating scandal from half a decade ago? They'd laugh me out the door. Instead, I poured a drink, even though it was morning, and sat in the kitchen with every light on. That night, I dreamed of the old house, the one Melinda and I used to share. In the dream, it was raining, and I was standing in the hallway, watching myself scream. But the version of me in the dream wasn't alone. Someone else stood behind him, smiling. The next morning, Melinda texted me an address. It wasn't her apartment or her sister's. It was a church daycare on the east side of town, a place I'd never heard of. Her message was short. Come after 3:30. I'll be in the back lot. No explanation. No warning. I arrived early and parked a few rows back so I could watch the entrance. The building was quiet, small, with chipped white paint and a crooked sign that read Little Seeds Learning Center. There was a chain-link fence around the play yard, and inside I saw a dozen kids running around under cloudy skies. And then I saw her. She wasn't facing me, just bouncing on one of those plastic ride-on toys. But something in my chest pulled tight, like a cord had been yanked hard and fast. Her hair was long, auburn like mine when I was a kid. She had the same awkward posture I did in old photos, like her limbs didn't quite belong to her yet. Even from behind, something in me knew. Melinda appeared from the side door a few minutes later. She waved me over like this was a dentist appointment and not the moment that might rewrite everything I thought I knew about my life. My legs didn't want to move, but somehow I walked across the lot, through the gate, past the teacher who gave me a quick glance before turning away. When I got close, Melinda bent down and whispered something to the girl. The child turned, and my heart stopped, because there they were, my mother's eyes. That rare, light gray color that never showed up in photos quite right. The same tired softness around the edges. The same confused, hesitant look I used to give strangers when I wasn't sure if I should speak. She looked up at me and said, "Are you the man from the picture?" I couldn't breathe. What picture? Melinda looked terrified. But the girl reached into her little pink backpack and pulled out a wrinkled drawing. She handed it to me without a word. It showed a man with a coat, standing in the rain, holding what looked like a broken heart in one hand and a red umbrella in the other. And in the corner was a girl, smaller than the others, watching from a window. I was shaking. I knelt down to her level. "Did you draw this?" She nodded. I tried to keep my voice steady. "Why did you draw me like this?" She looked me in the eye. "Because that's the last time you smiled at Mommy." Before the screaming. My knees buckled, and I had to sit down on the concrete. Melinda pulled her aside for a moment, then came back alone. "She remembers that night better than I ever could," she said. almost in a whisper. It's like she absorbed it somehow. Like she's a mirror to everything I tried to bury. I looked up at her. Did you bring me here just to hurt me again? No, she said. I brought you here because she's starting to ask about her father, and I don't want to lie to her anymore. I almost laughed. Now she cared about the truth? I was about to walk away when the girl ran back up and hugged my leg. You don't smell like the bad man, she said softly. He always smelled like matches. I looked down at her, heart thudding, skin cold. Matches. It was a detail I hadn't thought about in years, but the man in the doorway that night, the one I thought I imagined, had been lighting something. A match. I remembered the flicker. And suddenly, I realized something I hadn't considered in all this madness. That night, the fire alarm did go off. But we never found smoke. And Melinda never mentioned it. Until now. That night. After everything. After seeing her eyes, after the hug, after the mention of matches and the flicker of memories I didn't know I still had, I drove to the only place that made sense. The old house. Our house. The one I hadn't set foot near in 5 years. It had been sold, flipped, painted over. But I parked across the street like I was still allowed to walk through the front door, like I belonged there. I just sat behind the wheel, watching the porch light blink in slow, quiet rhythm. A new family lived there now. Their laughter filtered faintly through the windows. For the first time in years, I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel heartbreak or betrayal or bitterness. I felt still. The pieces had finally come together. Not perfectly, not with every answer I wanted, but enough. The man in the doorway, Melinda's stalker from before our marriage, had been there that night. Somehow, he'd inserted himself into a story that was already crumbling, twisting it, feeding the chaos. And in the aftermath, we had both blamed each other for things we didn't fully understand. But the most important thing wasn't the shadows in the past. It was the little girl standing in front of me just hours earlier. Maya. Yes. I learned her name later that night when Melinda called again. She told me Maya wanted to see me again. Not because she understood who I was. Not yet. But because she said I felt calm. That was her word. Calm. It broke something in me, in the best way. Over the next few weeks, I met Maya again. We started small. Ice cream at the park. A visit to a bookstore. I never pressed. I never asked for titles. I just showed up. I wanted to prove to her, and maybe to myself, that I could be something solid in her world, no matter how unsteady mine had been. Melinda apologized again. And again, she admitted that she'd been broken too, in ways she was only starting to face. I didn't forgive her immediately, but I listened. I didn't yell. I didn't hang up. I let the silence carry things we couldn't say. And strangely, it helped. The DNA test came in 2 weeks later. Positive. She's mine. The world didn't explode. The sky didn't fall. I just sat on my back porch, staring at the email, and cried until my chest ached. Not because I was angry, but because I had a chance to do something right. Today, Maya calls me Dawson. She doesn't know I'm her father yet. We're waiting until she's a bit older, until it can be done right, with care. But she hugs me now. She draws pictures that don't have red scribbles or monsters in doorways. She draws rainbows. We're building something new. Not a second chance with Melinda. That door closed long ago. But something better. A first chance with the only person who truly mattered. My daughter. And this time, I'm not walking away.